corpse on the papal throne, a man killed by his own beard, a war against the sea, and a dance that literally broke the people dancing it. These are the 5 stories I've got for you today. Let's begin.
History 1.
Caligula's war with Neptune. Caligula came to the throne of the Roman Empire in the year 37 AD. He was young, charismatic, and the son of Germanicus, a commander the people adored. At first, he won wide public approval, but his reign soon became known for cruelty, for unpredictable decisions, for an obsession with his own power, and for behavior that later writers described as madness. And that is when something happened that still sounds completely absurd today. One of the strangest and most symbolic episodes of his rule was a military expedition to the shores of the Atlantic Ocean in the year 40 AD. On paper, it was meant to be a triumphant conquest of mysterious and dangerous Britain. Roman legionaries marched towards the northern edge of Gaul, convinced they were taking part in a historic campaign. But when the army reached the shore of the English Channel, the invasion of Britain never happened. Why? Is still unclear. According to the sources, what came next was something nobody expected. Suetonius writes that Caligula drew his troops up in full battle order, positioned the siege engines, and then suddenly ordered the legionaries to collect seashells and to fill their helmets and the folds of their tunics with them. He called them the spoils of the ocean, owed to the capital and the Palatine. Cassius Dio adds that the emperor first sailed a short way out to sea aboard a trireme, then returned to the beach and gave the signal on the trumpets, as if a battle were about to begin. Other accounts say Caligula gave the order to attack, and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, from the most powerful army in the world at that time, began furiously slashing at the waves with their swords and stabbing the churning water with their spears. Either way, the shells gathered off the beach, the war spoils taken from the ocean, were packed into chests to be sent back to Rome as proof of victory. Caligula handed out generous cash rewards to his soldiers for bravery on the field of battle and announced the building of a lighthouse to commemorate his defeat of the waves. The episode went down in history not just as a sign of madness, but as final proof of how absolute power can peel a person away from reality. And now to an event still considered one of the most macabre in the history of the Church. The Cadaver Synod, 897. The turn of the 9th and 10th centuries was one of the darkest periods in the history of the Catholic Church, often called the pornocracy. Rome became the arena of a ruthless and bloody struggle for power between rival aristocratic families. Popes turned into puppets in the hands of local magnates. Their reign sometimes lasted only a few months and ended in murder. In this atmosphere of extreme hatred came one of the most macabre events in the history of Christianity, the so-called Cadaver Synod of 897. The director of the whole spectacle was Pope Stephen VI. His hatred for his predecessor, Pope Formosus, dead for more than 9 months by then, went far beyond all reason. In his lifetime, Formosus had become entangled in political conflicts with the powerful house of Spoleto, the family Stephen VI was tied to. To undo Formosus's political and religious decisions, and to please his own backers, Stephen made a decision that shocked even the Romans of his own day. What happened next sounds like a scene from a horror film. On the Pope's orders, the body of Formosus was dug out of its grave. The rotting, foul-smelling corpse was dressed in ceremonial purple papal robes and seated on a throne in the Basilica of St. John Lateran. A deacon was placed beside the body, and his job was to answer the charges on the dead Pope's behalf. Stephen VI ran the interrogation himself, screaming at the corpse and accusing it of taking the throne of St. Peter illegally, of perjury, and of breaking canon law. The verdict was entirely predictable. The dead Formosus was found guilty on every charge. All his ordinations and all his decisions were declared invalid. As punishment, once the trial was over, the body was stripped of its papal robes and dressed in the clothes of a layman, and the 3 fingers of the right hand, the ones Formosus had used to give blessings, were cut off. The body was buried at first. Then it was dug up again, weighted down, and thrown into the Tiber. But this cruelty was more than the people of Rome could stomach. A few months after the synod, a popular revolt broke out. Stephen VI was imprisoned and then strangled in his cell. And now the story of a Russian tsar who decided that the beard was the enemy of progress. When, at the end of the 17th century, the young Tsar, Peter I, came back from his secret diplomatic journey across Western Europe, the journey known as the Grand Embassy, he brought home more than admiration for modern fleets, architecture, and medicine. Above all, he brought back an obsessive conviction that traditional Russia was sunk in deep backwardness. One symbol of that backwardness in the Tsar's eyes was the way his own subjects looked, and especially the long, thick beards worn by the boyars and by ordinary people. In Old Rus, the beard carried a deep religious meaning. Many Orthodox believers, particularly in traditionalist circles, saw shaving the face as a sin and as a violation of the image of man as God had created him. Peter I had no intention of respecting tradition. After his return in 1698, he began his war on beards, at first forcing the men around him to shave. The nationwide decree that made shaving compulsory and introduced a tax for anyone who wanted to keep his beard came in 1705. It ordered every man to shave, with the exception of the clergy and the peasants, though bearded peasants still had to pay a fee when entering a town. Because public resistance was enormous, Peter decided to turn the situation into money. He brought in a merciless tax on owning a beard. The rate depended on your social standing. Wealthy merchants and boyars paid as much as 100 rubles a year. Anyone who paid this peculiar tax received a copper or silver token, which he had to carry as proof of his right to his own facial hair. The token showed a mustache and a beard with the words "money taken" and "the beard is a useless burden." A man caught on the street without a token was shaved on the spot by the Tsar's patrols, often with blunt razors. The reform caused enormous outrage, and to this day, it gets remembered as an absurd piece of tyranny. But in Peter's eyes, it was a key part of forcing European ways onto Russian society, and now one of the most frightening mysteries in the history of medicine, the dancing plague of 1518. On a hot July day in 1518, in the narrow streets of Strasbourg, something happened that remains one of the most frightening mysteries in medicine and in psychology. It started quietly with one woman, Frau Trophea. For reasons nobody understands, she walked out of her house and began to dance in the middle of the street, violently, rhythmically. There was no music, and there was no joy on her face, only terror and pain. She danced without stopping for almost a week until she collapsed from exhaustion. And when she came round, she went straight back to the same frantic movement. The situation quickly slipped out of control. Over the following days, dozens of people joined her. Within a month, the crowd possessed by the dance numbered around 400 of the city's inhabitants. They danced day and night in the burning sun. The shocked city authorities and doctors rejected the idea of demons and diagnosed the condition as hot blood. They decided the only cure was to let the sick go on dancing until the sickness worked its way out of them. A stage was built, professional musicians were hired, strong men were paid to hold up the dancers as they fainted. The decision turned out to be a disaster. The music fed the frenzy and drew in new victims. Later chronicles spoke of people dying of exhaustion, and some accounts even claimed more than a dozen deaths a day. The real number of victims is unknown though, and there is no certainty it ever reached the scale later writers described. In the end, the authorities realized their mistake. They banned the music and carted the surviving dancers off to a nearby shrine of Saint Vitus, where they were to be given exorcisms and prayers. Scientists still argue about the cause of the dancing plague. One theory points to ergot poisoning, a fungus that contains psychoactive compounds similar to LSD and causes hallucinations and convulsions. But a far more likely explanation is mass psychogenic illness. At the time, Strasbourg was struggling with famine, epidemics, and extreme poverty, enough to push a community living under constant stress into a collective, religiously charged psychosis. And finally, the story of a man killed by his own beard. Hans Steininger was a town councillor and the head of the town of Braunau am Inn, at that time part of Bavaria. He was highly respected locally for running the town well, but what brought him real, even international fame was something about his appearance, an extraordinary beard. His facial hair measured almost 2 meters, which meant that when the mayor stood upright, the beard trailed far along the ground behind him. In the Renaissance, a long beard was a mark of wisdom, dignity, and high social standing. Steininger treated his beard like his greatest treasure and like a symbol of his office. He looked after it with remarkable devotion, washing it regularly and anointing it with scented oils. To get through the day without dragging the beard through mud or tripping over it, the mayor worked out a special system. Every day he carefully rolled it up, folded it into a neat bundle, and tucked it into a made-to-measure leather pouch attached to his belt. According to the tradition that grew up later, everything changed in the fateful September of 1567, when a sudden, violent fire broke out in the town. The flames spread quickly through the wooden buildings and panic spread with them. As head of the town, Steininger threw himself into the evacuation and into coordinating the rescue. In the chaos, the rush and the thick smoke, he forgot to secure his beard. It dropped loose to the ground and unrolled to its full length. Escaping from the upper floor of one of the buildings, down narrow, steep wooden stairs, he put his foot down so badly that he stepped on the end of his own beard. The momentum carried him forward, he lost his balance instantly, and he fell hard, breaking his neck on the spot. The story of his death echoed across Europe almost immediately. After he died, the extraordinary beard was cut off and kept for centuries as a family relic. In 1911, under the terms of a will, the beard and other objects that had belonged to him passed to the town of Braunau. The original beard, around 2 meters long, is on display today in a case in the local museum, and a Renaissance epitaph showing Hans in full, with the beard falling below his feet, can be found on the northern outer wall of the Church of St. Stephen in Braunau. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to History One, and tell us in the comments what topic we should cover next.